you want to get a coffee before
Shalom Aleichem, beautiful and heilige Chevra. Welcome, welcome. So, Chazdei Hashem, we're starting our next installment. And it's a schus that we can do this. It's a schus that we can spread a hopefully wholesome, healthy message. I just want to thank the viewers. You Chevra, thank you so much for your messages. Really, honored, very, very surprised. So, Baruch Hashem, thank you. So I got on the WhatsApp and people send me emails that they like the share. That's why we're doing this. So okay, hopefully it's worthwhile. So I just want to start just by recognizing we're here. Just to ground ourselves, to recognize we're here. Spend a moment, das tachtoin chitzoni, is just look around, notice where we are, the space that we are in. As we have said time and time again, there's change and transition. Change is natural, transitioning we have to catch up. So Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, we can transition gracefully as well as changing in a healthy way. And to be aware, once we have transitioned, to be aware, this is the space I'm in now. And the most important place where you are is the place where you are now. The most important people that you will ever be with are the people that you are with now. And the most important time that you'll be in is the time now. And that's an alignment, as we know in Sefer Yetzirah 6.1, Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. You are the Nefesh, and what we are constantly doing, the more that we are grounded, we are uniting, we're bringing together time and space. That's what we do as human beings. And what we ultimately want to do is to create a healthy alignment, that I'm here and I'm bringing together time and space. So by the Baal Shem Tov would have a yichud, that when he would come to something in the prescribed time, it would be adnas and avaya. And he would take note of the space he was in, and then I'm here, and I'm now meeting this moment at this particular point in time. Adnas is the me, havaya is the time that he is connecting to. So if he's davening nates, if he's davening mincha, mariv, whatever it may be, the point is there's this understanding that we want to be the conscious beings, that we are uniting time, space through self. And this is brought on that Mishnah in Sefer Yetzirah 6.1 by Rabbi Yitzchak there. Sagenai brings the Nakuda of Olam is found in Shana, and Olam and Shana is found in Nefesh. And I think we mentioned last week by the Heilige Tzadikim of Jikuf that Adam is Da Ma'ani, self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is something which is incredibly important, because obviously without the self-knowledge we can't achieve much more. So we've got the Ibn Ezra and Shemais and many other makaras about the inyan of self-knowledge. So Adam is Rosh Hashanah's Da Ma'ani, self-knowledge. But then Adam is as well to do with time, which is Adam, David, Moshiach. This is a Jikaf and Shavuos. Adam, David, Moshiach. And in the world of Olam, whether the spiritual realms as well as the physical realms, we have the world of Adam is Arich, Das, Moshiach. Arich, Das, Malchus. Arich, Das, Malchus. So we have a unification just through the names of Adam, of time, space, and obviously self. And we want to bring this together. And lo and behold, when we are more centered, lo and behold, when we are more conscious and we are with what we are actually working on at that moment in time, we feel more fulfilled. We're more present. When I can go to bed at night, I can say, Chazdei Hashem, look at all the things I've accomplished today. And we should be proud of it. That's something incredibly special that we should not take for granted. So Chevra, where are we up to? So we've been speaking about this process of really making a shift in our experience, that I could live more as a neshama than a guf. And the way we say it in our community is we're making a shift to realize that truly we are a spiritual being having a physical experience, and we are not a physical being having a spiritual experience. We are a spiritual being having a physical experience. Now, usually we ask it in a question form. What are we? Are we a spiritual being having a physical experience, or are we a physical being having a spiritual experience? And what's the nafkamina? Why do I care? What's the difference? By the way, did you get it? You got it?
No.
The PDF, the text, I sent it to you. So this nukuda is a very, very important nukuda. So what we can say is like this, and I think we mentioned this again, so it's a good chazara. If I view myself as a physical being having a spiritual experience, spirituality is secondary. And what's primary? Physicality. What is physicality? Physicality, the world of physicality, it's a world of fracture. It's a world of separation. It's a world of disconnection. And if I am a physical being having a spiritual experience, I don't mind getting into another argument. I don't mind causing more fracture. I don't mind causing more disconnection. Because I'm a physical being having a spiritual experience. But if I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience, what's my primary? My primary is spirituality. And our definition of spirituality are things to do like the word echad. I want to constantly come to a greater state of unity. I want to come to a greater state of love. I want to come to a greater state of being a conscious practitioner of respect, kavod. So when I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience, physicality is secondary, spirituality is primary. And what I will be thinking is, what is my next action going to birth? What's my next action going to bring around in the world? And obviously, if I realize source, where I come from, this is brought in the Tzavasari Vash, Mamash at the beginning, that we are aliens. We have to view ourselves as aliens coming down into this world. The reason being is because I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience. So I have to have the availability to know how to use this world. But the key intent of my everyday living is being a person who's birthing a greater unity, oneness, love, respect into this world. And that's something very important. So let's stop for a moment, take a couple of questions, and go weiter. Yes?
Trying to understand the definition of spirituality that the Rebbe is using.
We're just throwing out a few things right now. But yes.
Yeah, I'm struggling with kavod. How can one have kavod for something that is not distinct from that?
So the nakuda of kavod is what's created. You create kavod. You create a heaviness. You choose to create a preciousness with what you work with what you meet. So kavod is boundaries. Kavod is typically as well a place. You look in halacha, and there's a kuntras on kavod. But you look in halacha, every single place in halacha where you can take advantage of someone or something, kavod is there. And what's kavod? Kavod's boundaries. So I care for this relationship. So I'm going to place kavod, a heaviness on it, in order so I don't take advantage of the relationship. So there's kavod isha, because a person could take advantage. There's a kavod to a person's rav, because a person could take advantage. There's kavod habrius, a person could take advantage. There's kavod Shabbos, because a person could take advantage. So kavod, you're placing upon yourself a heaviness to this particular thing in order to give it the proper respect. You choose to care. You choose to care. Does that answer a little bit?
Think about it more.
Okay.
I think that I can understand very much how echad and ahava are related.
Kavod is the prerequisite. Kavod, so to speak, is the prerequisite. If a person wants to have a love relationship, a good relationship with anything, if you don't note it exists, there's no relationship to start
Right.
with.
So I guess I'm struggling with reconciling these two ideas, that we're recognizing that we are all one, but then at the same time in our spirituality recognizing that there is a distinction.
So that's the paradox. That's the paradox. There's parts of us, the healthy parts of us. The healthy parts of us that we can allow to say we are one is good. However, there's many other layers. There's a nefesh bahami where I have to be very, very careful to recognize you are not me and I'm not you. in order to retain that level of consciousness. Because the moment I get used to something, then there could be a lack of kavod. So I stop appreciating. That's why appreciation is so important. So appreciation is a bechira of das. Appreciation, hakar satov, hakara, lahakir, is by definition an inyan of kavod. You get, it's subtle, yeah? It's if I appreciate, I come to realize I'm not you and you gave me something. That's an inyan of kavod. So you have all of these fractal points relating in Yiddishkeit to one key idea. So you have kavod, and then you have a fractal point of hakar satov, a fractal point of not taking advantage. And this is actually found in Chazal. And then you have these key points. And when you understand how Chazal's coding these key points, you realize in this sugya the ikka is kavod, but in this sugya the ikka is hakar satov. So for example, in the sugya of where we're speaking about kafui tov, if a person doesn't have gratitude, they can't be makabel ol malchus shamayim. So a fractal point of hakar satov in one sugya, this is by Rav Meir Belsky, Zichron Livracha, used to speak about this, will be hakar satov, and a fractal point is kavod. But in a fractal, in a main idea to do with kavod in another sugya point, a fractal point will be hakar satov. So you've got the prat and the klal. But the fact is, what you will come to see in Yiddishkeit, there's only so many key concepts in Chazal, and those key concepts overlap. It's the same with etymology. The etymology, if you go to the world of the Ksava Kabbalah, the Malbim, the world of the Gra, the world of Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, what you will see typically is there's only so many words. There's not so many words in Lashon HaKodesh, but through an articulation of root, you come to see how many more words flower. Now that's actually absolutely profound, because you see the interconnection, you see how everything is connected. So you have this nakuda of kavod, and this nakuda of kavod is part of and the prerequisite that leads you into being a spiritual being. Kavod is I have enough self-respect where I don't just indulge in something without thinking. So I will stop and I'll ask myself, okay, I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience. I've got enough self-respect where I will say, okay, what's now my next action? How am I going to act? What am I going to birth into the world? Am I a physical being having a spiritual experience, that physicality is primary, spirituality is secondary? Or really, do I view myself as a spiritual being having a physical experience? And this is something of key importance, because ultimately I am neshama and das. In other words, many ways of saying this. I'm neshama and consciousness. I'm neshama and ruach coming down into this body. And once I make that shift, and this text is about living as a neshama and living as ruach in this world. That's what this text is. The moment I make that shift, my life is extraordinarily different in a good way. I become naturally more kinder, more patient, more self-understanding. And when I'm not, I can hold it better. As we said last week, we can hold it better. It's not an algorithm. You do this and this and this and this will. No, it's Hashem in the world. But I understand I have a better command. This very much is to do with Rabbi Freund, Zichron Livracha. Rabbi Freund very much wanted people to come to understand that everything is ayin. And when you live that, and through conversation you can get there, everything is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a mechanism, there's a mechanistic approach to our world that the Baira Olam created, and we, once we get to the game plan, typically our lives improve. Now, why, as we mentioned last week, why do our lives improve? You may still feel icky, but lamashal, if you're in a community where you have somebody who's loving you, holding you, respecting you, who's calling you up if you don't turn up, who's giving you space when you want space, so a person still may feel icky, but they're being held by another because they chap. That's the society that we want. And if you are graced, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you the kayach, that you yourself can understand how you work and can pick yourself up, that's absolutely marvelous. That's absolutely marvelous. And yes?
Two things. First of all, there is room on the shelf for the covered countries. Second of all, what I understand,
Thank you.
What I'm understanding what the Rav saying is, well, the Rav presented a question: is am I a physical being having a spiritual experience, or am I a spiritual being having a physical experience? And it sounds like what I understand is that we are a spiritual being having a physical experience, and to me that sounds like we are a soul. In the past, what I remember the Rav saying is that people say we're a soul, but we're really
we are multifaceted. Yes, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. That's why I said we're like neshama and consciousness. We're neshama and consciousness. We're not just a soul. There's more sophisticated. We have a far more sophisticated, nuanced approach in who and what we are. Elokai neshama shenatata bi. It's based on psukim. So I'm the B. What's the B? So the Mekubalim explain the B is das. That's I'm consciousness. And I have a soul and I have a body. Obviously, they are part of me, so I can say I am my emotions, I am my thoughts and feelings. However, from another side of the coin, and this is what we read, I think a couple of pages back, where it feels like me, we have it somewhere here, that for sure it feels like me, and it is me. So when I experience a thought, it's like on page 11, 10, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13, 14, somewhere there, it's in one of those pages. So what happens is that we mentioned that when I have a thought, it feels real. And that's why, again, in our generation, it's we are subtlety. It's important to be subtle, especially in our dor. Bechina of Yisod is all about subtlety. We're in the generation of, and the generation b'toich Yisod. We're in Yisod Sheba Yisod, moving into Yisod Sheba Malchus, according to one set of opinions. And it's all about subtlety. So yes, I am a neshama, but more precisely, I'm consciousness, and I have the ability to turn my gaze up to neshama to hear the world of the neshama, which is, and bring it all the way down through my consciousness into the nefesh. And that translates as, in experience, insight. That could translate as insight. That I become an insight machine. And what is insight? And this is interesting because it's not for now. It's a whole shir within itself. But Lemashal, when I was learning with Reb Chaim Sinwani, one of my teachers from the Yemenite part of the world, I remember, so he drew very heavily from the Rambam. And it's interesting because when we would learn Rambam, especially Moreh Nevuchim, how I reconcile that being a student of Rabbeinu, it's another question. But the Nakuda is that he would say, when we spoke about this Nakuda of Rambam being a rationalist, Rambam, if you look through Moreh Nevuchim, Rambam's not a rationalist. He's an appreciator of Aristotle, but he's not an Aristotelian Talmud. He appreciates and if you look, for example, at Moreh Nevuchim, it wants to take you beyond the rational. You've got Ruach HaKodesh, you've got Nevuah. That's not rational. So we use these words and we tag these words. Oh, rational and mysticism. And we lose out. We're meant to integrate. So the point is, and this is a very important diuk. This is a very, very, very important diuk. What we want is to create through language, and this is to do with education, and we mentioned this, I think, in this year, it could be, you'll tell me. But what happens is that we tag a piece of information when I want to share a piece of information to the consumer, to the student's availability of where they are in life. So we want to share a piece of information with a child. What we need to do is tag that piece of information in context to where that child is. If we tag that information and it not in the reference point of that child, the child's not going to get it. So for example, if I want to speak out something mathematical and I use pure mathematics instead of using blue cars and red cars or sweets, whatever it may be, the reference point is missing. And this is something that gets very much missed in education today. We know that we have to meet the child, we have to meet the other person. It's not just with a child, it's with anybody we speak to. So if somebody's coming, I want to share information, it's in me, I want to share something, I have to be conscious of that person in front of me. Where are they? What's the tagging system I can use to communicate to them? That's stage one. Then what you have to do, if I then want to push them, I want to have a conversation to push them to become a different thinker, something different. I believe that it's important that they hear this. So I have to make sure that, okay, I found now my tagging system and it's within their frame of referencing. I now have to make sure I don't jump too much. So I have to make sure there's incremental jumps to take that person on that journey. So what does that look like? So I want to share something. I meet the person where they are. And then what I have to do, I have to delicately build from one logical step to another logical step, to another logical step, to another logical step, in order so I could move a person from here to there. That's what parenting is, that's what education is. And hopefully when we tag properly and we can be convincing enough and authentic enough, hopefully those steps, so sometimes I may miss a step. You didn't get it? Let me come back. Let me add in, let me come from a different angle. Because again, when I'm educating, I need to meet the person where they are. From meeting the person where they are, it's not the end of the story. I then have to create the proper tagging from one sequential logical step to another, to another, to another, so they will get what they are being shared. Does that make sense? So what the Rambam, for example, in Moreh Nevuchim is trying to do, he's trying to bring us to a state of Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah. But we have to, this was the major problem that he was dealing with, is that a lot of people weren't necessarily being spoken to from a place of, in their world, things making sense. So he used Aristotle as a tool, and people can argue with this, it's no problem. This is what I received from my teachers, and it's brought in other places as well, but people may disagree, no problem. But what the Rambam used was Aristotle as a tool, because that was what was common in that day. But the whole goal was not to stay there. The whole goal was to go beyond that, to move into a world of Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah. And this is something very important. So we're speaking a language. We have a Nefesh HaBahami. We have to make sure we understand there's a Nefesh HaBahami, and the Nefesh HaBahami is my experience, but it's not the full of me. What's in the Nefesh HaBahami? So we've coded, as we said in the last couple of sessions, that we are what? We are relating in the bodysuit with the thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. Whether, again, depending which shita you go by, that is the guf. Guf is the nefesh, is just the guf, the malchus, it's outside of the nefesh. I'm not going there yet. But what we are saying is that I'm relating to my thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. This is what it is experienced as. We are labeling this das tachtoin pnimi. And what we want to understand is really build a good foundation in order to chap das tachtoin pnimi. And then there's das tachtoin, as we said, chitzoni. Once I realized that, and once I realized again, there's the fact or the fixed aspect of the experience, and then you have the content or the variability, the variable aspect of the experience. So once I chab that, that's a massive shift if I live like that. So to say it's not part of me is incorrect, but to say it's the full me is incorrect as well. So it's the same with the neshama. The neshama is not the fullest part of me, but for sure it's a part of me. So, but what can we say? What can we say in this incarnation as it is? I am consciousness. Until we really hit that proper alignment, I am consciousness. I am das, and that's if hundreds and hundreds of makoros. In one of the other chaburas, we sent out like 5 or 6 makoros, but it's hundreds of makoros. The saving grace in our generation is to become more self-aware, das. We call it das. From that position of das, then we could start the integration process and the healing that we need in order to once again come to the place of how the Borei Olam, divine intelligence, created us. Be'ezras Hashem. So Okay, a couple of questions, then we'll go into the text. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to understand, the Rabbi saying that das is not the neshama.
No.
Consciousness is not the neshama.
Correct.
Consciousness is because we are all chelek elokan now, right?
Correct.
So if Hashem is divine intelligence, is consciousness a part of divine intelligence?
So you're asking a very, very good. You're asking a very, very good question. There are distinctions in language that we use in order to communicate. So what we say is the neshama is what you just made. That's mamash, the bara olam, and we have access to that part.
But we can be something other than a chelek elokan.
So collectively, yes, but misad the makabel, in our experience, we can. That's why people could do Averis. In mitzad the noisen, this is like the language of the Leshem. Mitzad, our experience, I, you, we experience otherness.
But that's like an illusion.
It doesn't matter. The fact is, it
And
exists.
I'm saying when we speak of truth, we speak of the fact that we can be nothing other than, a part of Hashem.
You are right, but not everyone in the world believes that.
So, but I just want to know when you say that, I always understood that as we are neshamas, and Hashem is the neshama of the neshamas. So,
Correct.
So we are.
So you are right, and another way of communicating is I have a neshama, I'm not a neshama, I'm my consciousness, and I can choose to have access with practice to my neshama. So that's why in tefillah, for example, we can't run away from the fact that pshat, the words in tefillah, come to portray something else. Elokai neshama shenatata bi. Who's the bi?
But that I always understood that as the way the Rebbe was explaining education. The tefillah is speaking in
Exactly.
a way that we can understand.
100%. 100%. So we're finding our way back to that alignment.
But the place that we're finding ourselves the way back to is like I'm a little like
I want to, if I could say it like this, I'm finding my way back to redemption. What's the redemption experience? The redemption experience in exile is that I can be an aligned being of the collective neshama, which is an alignment of neshama, ruach, and nefesh. If we want to include chai and yechida, we can include chai and yechida.
where's das for that?
Das is the conscious part of us in between what we call neshama and nefesh. So there is a collective neshama, and then there is a specific neshama. Neshama, ruach, and nefesh. And the more alignment and integration we create, we're tapping in to the collective, what we call neshama.
So the Rebbe is saying we are choice.
No, we are consciousness.
But I always understood that we are nothing other than, I didn't always understand. When I understood this changed my life, so I didn't want it to, I'm trying to clarify. We are not ever separate from Hashem, and we emanate from Hashem. That's who we are unconditionally. When we sin, we disconnect from the awareness of that, or the alignment with that. But that is who we are. So I always understood we are neshama, and when we sin, we separate from the truth of who we are, and we act as if we're not. We act as if we're not.
It's what happens if I'm not sinning and I'm just not aware.
Then I'm not aware. But if you're not
So-
aware, you will sin.
So, but I may not sin. Why would I potentially sin if I'm not aware?
Yeah, you could be robotic.
I could be robotic, just going through, and I'm not sinning. And even if I am aware, I can sin. But the point is, again, just trying to be very logical here. The point is, we're using a language. If I am aware, who's the I am that is to be aware, and to be aware of what?
So that's why I felt like it's the choice that we.
So it's not. You're right. You're right that one of the vessels, one of the handles of consciousness is choice. We call it bechira. So you have awareness, you have das. From das, you have kavana. You can guide your thinking. Then you can assess, called MS, what I want to do. Then you have bechira. I choose to do this. Bechira is a tool.
You can't choose without being aware that
Okay.
there are options.
So when I lose my physical body, I become awareness.
So yes, but the awareness that we become when we lose our physical body is something beyond our grasp.
It's not physical, it's not Das.
It is das, but we become das, but we don't have any mechanism within us to process without nefesh, without our thinking, feelings, and physical sensations. So if there's a tzaddik or a tzaddikes in their lifetime that worked on das, they then, after they graduate from this world, they have the availability to maneuver in and out of this world without their bodysuit.
When I talk about the eternal part of myself, I'm talking about my neshama or I'm talking about Das?
You're using English words.
When I talk about the nitzvius of the nitzvius, like what the part that doesn't die.
So there's a few aspects that does not die. You've got the das. You've got, again, it's different shitot. You've got the ruach and the neshama and ruach. Again, there's different shitot out there. But what stays by the kever when a person graduates from this world? The neshama and the ruach. Das is in the ruach.
Is stay by the kever forever?
They could do, according to one opinion, according to another opinion. Sorry, they go, so you've got the das and the ruach that goes up, and the nefesh stays by the kever, and the nefesh over time can decay. So it's what all that's important to note is we have a sophisticated approach, and it's not a simplistic conversation of this and this and this. And there's Masorah, and there's different shitot. But why this conversation is valuable is just to understand, wow, Yiddishkeit really does have a sophisticated approach. And more than that, something which is really important that we spoke about, this was in our Chabur yesterday, that the nakuda of our approach of neshama, ruach, and nefesh, people typically think is found in Nista. It's found in the Kabbalah. It's not actually. It's found very much in Niglas HaTorah. It's found in Chazal. This is how Chazal code our experience in Gemara, in the Tanakh, in the Mishnah, in the Gemara. So we've written there's a whole kuntras that's written specifically on this. There's room for...
on the shelf.
There's room on the shelf. I appreciate him. I like him. He's giving... Okay. Yes.
I'm processing what the Rabbi is answering, and it's bringing to mind the condition of alien hand syndrome when somebody has a split in the web of neurons that connects the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. It's possible that their, let's say, right hand does not respond anymore to what the left side of the brain is commanding. That doesn't mean that their hand is no longer part of them. It just means there's no way of communicating. So when
Yes.
a person passes on from this world, they get disconnected, and there's a lack of integration and a lack of communication, unless obviously a communicative system was developed over the course of
Correct.
a person's lifetime. But that doesn't mean it's not part of them. And
Yes.
there's this lack, and in a way, it is not part of them because it's not subject to what they want as
Yes.
a person. So there's just a way of sort of illustrating it for myself that I
Yes.
think might be helpful.
Yeah, from a neurological, bio-neurological perspective. Yes.
Now that we're on this conversation, how does Minchas Yehuda fit into all this?
In what?
In the
In Minchas Yehuda with what? With what?
state of Minchas Yehuda,
No.
the whole opinion of the Ruchas flying around the world, and
So you're asking again, brilliant question.
sounds like a being that just doesn't have a body.
Correct. And there's some sort, they're trapped. They're trapped.
Which their das is trapped.
Well, it's the ruach and the nefesh are trapped. Ruach and nefesh are trapped.
So it's not by the kever.
Correct, and it's a whole conversation exactly what that is. And again, what we're trying to understand is Yiddishkeit is sophisticated. We're not children. We have a very mature, sophisticated approach to how we work, and that's why these conversations are so important. So yes, there's a conversation to be had when, for example, one of the 20th century Kabbalists, a student of the Ben Ish Chai, the Minchas Yehuda, Rav Yehuda Fataya, he writes a book, and in his book, it's a journal of all of the souls that were lost. They were coming to him in order to be corrected, rectified. And Mr. Bennett's asking, so where does that fit in? But the point is that we have a sophisticated approach, and there's even a reality when a person lives life a certain way that they are trapped between two worlds. They can't go to the waiting house of Olam Hanashamais, and they're trapped, and it's very painful. And then we have Tzaddikim, Chazdei Hashem, we have Tzaddikim who care enough that these souls can come to them, and the tzaddik can assess how to do a tikkun to get them into Gehenna. Like, I just think, the way I look at it is like, what a rachamim. Like, what a nechama, wow. But yes, we have a sophisticated approach. And that's the first level of conversation. There's a mechanism to how we work, and that mechanism to how we work is in Niglas HaTorah. This is what we're meant to know. Like we started off in the first shiurim, 8 shiurim ago, saying that when we are living Yiddishkeit, we want to be living Yiddishkeit with enthusiasm, with excitement. We want to live Yiddishkeit that we're alive with it. We want to have more, so to speak, velocity. We want to be able to have more power shooting up in the air than the atmosphere and what's it called that brings you down? Gravity. So there's a fight. There's like gravity out there that's drawing you down. You want to be able to have that velocity to pick yourself up.
In order to just know that it's sophisticated, we want to understand.
So that's what we are.
I'm saying that it's sophisticated, I think is accurate.
People don't know it's sophisticated. People think we're a body and a soul. They use English words. So it's to understand that there's an approach, and the approach we're working on recognizing and really delineating the experience of this approach, which Baruch Hashem we're doing. Nachon? Yes or no? Yeah, there's always more. And this chabura is a bit of both. It's information, and through the information we're talking around the text, and as well we are speaking into the human experience. So it's both. And we want to try and hold both. It's not just me reading from a text and that's it. We want to open up and talk. And it's not always so posh, I get that. So yes, I do want to, saying that though, I'm conscious of the time. Take a couple of more questions and we'll do this chapter for today, Be'ezras Hashem.
How does the consciousness work? You said it's rooted in the Daat, but women are more from Bina.
So everybody works the same way, but we draw from different places. So women have a bini yasera and a das kala. That doesn't mean they don't have das. They just have a weaker das, whatever that means. A more flexible das. Gamish, yes. And men, they have a stronger das, and they have a weaker bini yasera. Tachlis, the way, when collectively when you look at it, this is brought in the Smichas Chachamim, who was a grandson of the Maharal of Naftali Katz. So he writes that Kirtzono is women are the step closer to evolution than men. We had to have the woman in order to teach us how to be. We had to have, it was too much, what we were saying about education, that you have to have that tagging process. So whatever it means, not going into it now, whatever it means, man, Adam, in the way Adam was first presented, it was too far away for what our tikkun was after in the creation process. So we had to have woman brought in to create more of a educational tagging process. Sounds very odd, but we're saying it as it is, between us and what we need to achieve. So we have to be around a creature, just as we are a creature working on being metakin ourselves, more evolved. So, for example, what do we say? Shalosani isha. What does a woman say? Kirtzono. What's a higher darga? Kirtzono shalosani isha. Kirtzono. Shalosani isha is feeding into gaiva. But that's the whole point. There's a very, very deep kinech going on here. Not going into it now. It's a very, very deep nakuda that our potentially can be greater than the woman. We can be higher than a woman. The male can be higher. The nakuda is what we need to do is include that in our process of growth. But how does that occur? Bittul. So I find it very, very fascinating. Throughout the ages, typically in many, many, many places, it's not conclusive. This is not conclusive by any means. It's not conclusive. But typically what you will find is a woman loses her family name. A woman, she can hold a child for 9 months. If men become pregnant, there'll be people throwing themselves off the cliffs. So it's a very, very deep nakuda, and it's a very, very deep conversation. It's a very deep conversation. So a woman has a bina yisera and a das kala. Doesn't mean she lacks das. They have the same, everyone has the same mechanism, but there's a knech, there's a certain actualization, a certain openness to another area. They're drawing a little bit more from another area. So it's a very important point that you're sharing. We all work the same way, but we have certain various access points which are more open or more closed. Yes?
Just to be pedantic, kala does not mean weak.
Correct.
It means light. It
Light.
means less
Yeah.
of a burden.
Yes.
We're able
Thank
to
you.
carry it.
You hear that?
of a-
Yeah? Doesn't mean weaker or lighter. A das kala. Kala is, yeah, thank you. Very, very important. So, again, that's why maybe use the term flexible. Flexible das. So, again, what we're taking away right now as we're doing chazara, and I'm trying to add on, each time we do a little bit of a chazara, I'm trying to add on a bit more to give this more of a shape in knowing where we're coming from and knowing within our experience that the experience works a very clean way. We're always relating right now to 3 things and 3 things only. Number 1, I'm relating to my thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. And number 2, there's the fix aspect. The fact that I think, the fact that I feel, the fact that I physically sense. And then you've got the content of that. And the content for each and every one of us is different. So let's now move into this. Let's move into this. B'seidig Amor Tov. So how can I start observing? How can I start observing? So now we're pulling back from the experience. We're wanting to pull back from the experience. At first, we can start to observe our internal workings by simply asking 3 questions and then working on non-judgmentally observing which comes up. That which comes up. If something comes up, so number 1, just to say it in a normal language, because when I read it doesn't appear so flowy, something comes up, a thought comes up, a feeling, a physical sensation comes up. I want to work on non-judgmentally observing something coming up if something comes up. So there's times where maybe nothing will come up. There's an exercise that we're going to learn soon, habata, lahabit, to observe. And people say, oh, I'm doing it wrong. Well, no, you're not doing it wrong, because by definition you can't do it wrong, because you're non-judgmentally observing, so you're listening to a hero in the present moment. Which is odd. Which is odd, because we're typically not guided in life to non-judgmentally observe a thought, feeling, and physical sensation. We are guided in life to converse with it.
Observe and judge.
Yeah. No one tells us don't judge. So if I'm judging, I will come up and say I'm doing it wrong. Who says you're doing it wrong? And it takes time. It takes time. It's a new paradigm. It's a new experience. Here, I can provide some examples of what a person might ask to become aware of themselves. So here specifically we're speaking about das tachtoin pnimi. Das tachtoin pnimi. And again, if I'm correct in my assumption, all the words on this page should make sense to you. Maybe not experientially, but cerebrally, they should make sense to you. That's if we've set this up properly. Let's go. Firstly, I can ask, what am I physically experiencing right now in the present moment? We can ask this question and we can observe, we can notice. We can perform a body scan. I just notice how my body is placed right now in the present moment, how different surfaces meet my skin. I can feel the temperature in the room around me, or even feel the different temperatures between my bare face and the parts of my body that's covered by clothing. I could become aware of any itches, pay attention to the loudest and the quietest sounds around me, and simply look around and see how everything is placed. So really here in this text, I've actually gone off a little bit. This is not necessarily physical sensations, because I'm going now into a little bit of das tachtoin chitzoni. The moment I shift from the awareness of the quietest to loudest sounds and to see things around me, I can't remember why I wrote it like that. It could very well be I just wasn't.
It will be the
So I don't remember, but just to make that diuk, we're speaking here about das tachton in the last sentence, chitzoni, I'm spatially aware, but really physically aware. I'm aware of my physical sensations. Instead of reacting to any of these things, I notice, questioning where they are coming from, or letting them pull my thoughts down the rabbit hole of how I should respond to them. I can simply acknowledge them, identify them, and then move my attention to the next thing. So the goal here is having the ability to become aware of something. So right now, where are your hands placed? As I'm speaking to you right now, where are your hands placed? Become aware of where your hands are right now. Your left hand. So I'm aware my fingers, part of my fingers are on the plastic of the Stände cover, and two of my fingers are on the paper, and I can feel that distinction. I can feel the pressure and the temperature. Especially on the plastic, my palm it's hotter, it's warmer. And my right hand, it would just move to your right hand. So my right hand right now, my thumb is on the plastic, and the rest of my fingers are on the wood. So just to become aware of whatever is. And you can become aware of it, and as I am, I'm just describing the experience. I'm not judging the experience. Typically, as we mature in this avodah, you wouldn't even describe the experience. You just be with whatever is. But first, again, in order to tag and move through a sequential processing of experience, at first, what we typically want to do, because we feel, so to speak, even the words we use, we think that we must describe it. So just allow yourself to describe it, but allow yourself to describe it without judging it. This is what I'm experiencing right now, and it's not good, bad, or it's not right or wrong. Do you get that? Again, we'll go more into this experientially, but we're trying to bridge here. We're trying to bridge these sets of wisdom teachings. We can ask and observe what emotions or feelings I'm experiencing right now, and non-judgmentally, if something is happening right now in the present moment, to the best of my ability, we can witness, notice, and observe. Gewaldig. That's how sometimes we feel. Baruch Hashem. So again, what emotions, what feelings are you feeling right now? And what I would say is, if you look in the world of Musa, feelings are far more elusive than our thoughts and physical sensations. Our physical sensations are far more direct in experience. And when we're speaking about the world of emotions and feelings, it's a whole conversation to be had. But you can be aware, what emotions am I feeling right now? And just to the best of your ability, there's no good, bad, right, wrong. Is there something there? Is there nothing there? And even that nothing is something. It occurs, so where are we up to? We can identify the emotion and try to give it a name or a tone without explaining or responding to them. So again, potentially what would be happening here? Thoughts can come in and tag very quickly what I am feeling. So that's a hirhur working with an emotion. That's how it works. What we want to do is completely bypass the nefesh. Sorry.
The thought or the hirhur is trying to make sense of the emotion?
Correct. And what ultimately in our levels of maturity we are wanting to accomplish as we grow, and it seems to be, again, that really important word seems to be, that the inevitable evolution of your consciousness can take you to a place where you can observe without any voice. That seems to be what happens. Yes?
So when the Rav says that about physical emotions, that physical sensations, that makes sense to me. I can see observing a physical sensation without labeling it with words, because I attention is focused on the physical sensation. But with emotions, I feel like if I don't give a label to the emotion, then it translates down into a physical sensation.
Exactly. So this is exactly what we just said. Emotions are a whole world that needs to be described. In the world of Musa, they speak about how physical sensations are thoughts are far more apparent. Emotions are more elusive.
So you was just saying we need to discuss this more. That's the answer. Or like I'm saying, like you can't experience an emotion. When I start to experience or just observe an emotion, it becomes a physical sensation.
So what happens with our maturity and with the conversation? What seems to be is you can let go of that, and you don't have to place a name or a physical sensation upon that emotion. It's odd.
So then what is it?
We're not going, that's the whole point. It needs further conversation, but just to articulate the point of your experience. You are proving what I just said. You're proving that, number one, two things I just said in the last 10 minutes, just to make very clear. The last thing I just said, emotions are a conversation because of exactly what you are sharing. And number two is that what we tend to do is, through tagging them, remain in the nefesh. As we mature in our consciousness, eventually you can observe it without labeling it. So for example, the wording here, you could become aware of the tone of it. It doesn't need to be labeled. You will have your own experience of what it is, and it's an unfolding journey. So I just want to thank you for bringing up what you brought, because we discussed those 2 points and it could very subtly be missed. So does that speak to your query in regards to recognizing that it is a challenge? It is a challenge, and exactly what you say is what most people experience.
I always understood emotions as energy in motion, and the only way I can interact with energy is from a physical, like the only way I can...
That makes sense, and maybe it could very well be. And in our coding of it, maybe that's all we can do. Because if you are feeling something, by definition, feeling is feeling. So yes, it's a question. Yes, and a conversation. So thank you. Baruch Hashem. Good.
So because we can only experience emotion either through ascribing language to it or allowing ourselves to experience the physical sensations associated with that emotion, yes?
I guess so, at this point in time.
Yeah, at this point in time. We should not, in our observation at this point in time, be trying to avoid labeling it with something or feeling the physical sensation.
So,
we should just observe that and know that that's not experiencing the emotion
okay.
correctly. That is.
So what we're saying is, it's true to say at this point in time, either you think you feel it and it's in your body, something's going on in your body because you are feeling something, or you're thinking something. It's true to say you should not ignore it, and you do not need to label it. But this is why it's so important to study Musa. This is the whole world of Musa. The whole world of Musa was the study of the Torah definition of an emotion. We today fall prey to this reality where I label a particular feeling in English, and I label that feeling in English according to the sociological norms. Who says when I say simcha, simcha is happiness? Where did that come up from? Well, if you think about it, realistically, it came in the 19th century, where people were learning the works in Lashon HaKodesh, now in English, and there needed to be some translation. So somewhere along the line, someone translated simcha as English, and that's now what simcha has become. But does the Torah say simcha is happiness?
I understand that as simcha is a vibration, and I'm using the word happiness to talk about the same vibration.
But is simcha the vibration of happiness?
Still
It
not
doesn't
limited.
matter.
Well, I think it does, because we then grow up believing that simcha is this. But does the Torah, how does the Torah define simcha? Does the Torah define simcha as happiness or joy? And is there a subtle distinction between subtleness and joy? We have 10 languages for simcha.
Right, so the Torah describes simcha as simcha. When we talk in English, we use a different word to discuss the same vibration.
But I'm suggesting maybe it's not the same vibration, and maybe it causes us problems.
I wonder if that's not the same question as when I say blue and you say blue, are we both seeing the same color?
Exactly, and that's why in the first chapter or the second chapter we spoke about what is the Torah's definition. This is the exact point of why we need to study the Musa Sfarim, and specifically Tanakh and Chazal, in how it describes a particular midah. Because you are right, from a Western sociologically prescribed way of living, a scientifically based way of living, which most people function around today, it's based on observation. And what I would suggest, and this is what I learned from my teachers, we should be living from a Torah perspective.
But even if we're all using the word simcha, we don't know that we're all describing the same internal experience.
Unless Torah defines what simcha is, and I can catch up to the experience of the Torah definition of simcha. The diuk is like this. Does the Torah give specific definition to a midah? I would answer yes. Do we need to do the investigative, curious work to figure out what that definition of Torah is in connection to that midah? The answer is yes. Have people done that? The answer typically is no. So what people then do is take an English word which has all of its sociological Western connotations, and then we superimpose that on that midah.
But even if I was describing to you my morning today and I say I was full of simcha, we can't know that I'm talking about the Torah definition of simcha.
But that's why we need to study to see what the Torah definition of simcha is.
So I'm saying it doesn't have to do with whether or not I use the word simcha or whether or not I use the word happiness.
It's to do with
It has to do
definition.
with whether or not I have acknowledged and understood very clearly what the Torah is describing as simcha and identified it in my own experience accurately.
Correct.
It
So,
doesn't matter what word I'm using.
well, it does if it's English, and it's not necessarily that definition that Chazal bring forth.
But even if I use the word simcha and I use the Hebrew word,
Correct.
I'll still be talking about something completely different than what the Torah.
So 1 minute, take a step back. Exactly, that's the point.
So
What you just said is the point.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter
I-
English or Hebrew.
of course it
matters.
does.
To me, I understand that it matters. Understanding very deeply what the Torah means when it says simcha.
Correct.
And identifying
Correct.
that accurately in my
Yes.
experience.
Yeah, we're on the
And
same
then at that
page.
point, if I use the word happiness, I'm actually describing the right thing. It doesn't matter that.
Well, no, there's a difference as well using Lashon HaKodesh. When we use a term in Lashon HaKodesh, it's producing a certain energy.
Okay.
When we use the term happiness, it's producing a different energy.
If I would use it, for example, educationally, because I'm speaking to somebody who only speaks English, but I have identified simcha accurately and identified it in my experience accurately, I could probably use happiness as a stepping stone to explain.
Correct.
Because have
When
to
I
draw.
teach, when we're learning Musa, I always share, and this was based on Rav Yitzchak Rudzinski, I always share the following, that we're using an English word to describe a word in Lashon HaKodesh that has very accurate definition. The English word doesn't have an accurate definition. So be aware that at this point in time, I'm only using this word as an educational device in order to communicate something, but to understand that Torah, again, has a sophisticated approach to understanding how midos work. And our duty is to work on
I see
that.
in linguistics all the time.
Correct.
Sometimes there's a word in Hebrew and I try to explain it in English and I'm missing the nuance
Exactly.
of the...
Exactly.
So the Rebbe is saying happiness is missing the nuance of the Lashon HaKodesh.
It's missing a lot more than the nuance.
Assuming that the work was done and that it's processed and that...
Correct, but it's still missing the language itself is kadosh. English is a lesser language than Lashon HaKodesh. Language of Lashon HaKodesh vibrates on a higher frequency. Every letter, every single word produces a vibration that created reality.
No,
English does not and will never.
It's the difference of black and white. You can't compare your Lashon HaKodesh to that language because Badafka Sefer Yetzirah makes it very, very clear that the 22 letters of the alphabet, like those are like foundational. They create the universe.
Correct.
No other language
Correct.
touches that.
Correct. So it occurs to me in conversation that you don't have to have a reason to feel bad. So you don't have to have a reason to feel good either. And because I don't need to communicate the present feeling to anyone, I don't need to worry about whether I can label its nuance or explain why or how the emotion is working. I can simply feel the feelings. So this nakuda, I can simply become aware of whatever I'm feeling and eventually with maturity move out of labeling it. I don't have to label it. I could simply, to the best of my ability, become aware and hold that level of awareness. This is called hishtavus. Hishtavut. Shaviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. Hishtavut. I could simply become aware and hold my experience. And that's connected to das, becoming a baldas. It may help to close your eyes because, as Rav Yitzchak Isaac Shapira would say, when you close your eyes to the outside world, you open your eyes to the inside world. If you find it difficult to experience the feeling without making some sort of sense of it, it may help to think of the feeling as a visitor in your consciousness, expressing that calmly. Calmness is here to visit. Or I sense that frustration is trying to say hello. And this is as well something very important. What we're trying to do is simply, to the best of our ability, in an organic way, retether to our experience. We are wanting to reframe our experience. By the way, the word nechama, not going into it now, but the etymology of the word nechama means to reframe. When you want to bring nechama to somebody, you want to reframe their experience. Then, most interestingly, I can ask, what am I thinking? And again, non-judgmentally observe and notice if anything is going on within my thinking part of self. So with hirhurim, this specifically is called hirhurim. With hirhurim, I could become aware of my internal thoughts. They manifest as imagery and sound. That's how hirhurim manifests. That's how thoughts manifest. You try it for yourself. You see an image or you hear voices within your mind. Is there any imagery or sound? And again, to the best of my ability, witness, notice, and observe. This is a very novel experience to most. And we may find it hard at first to think about a thought without having to make the thought make sense, to justify the thought's existence, or to follow the thought to the next thought it sparks. If you're struggling to let your thoughts go after you notice them, it may help to identify whether the thought is related to the past or present or future, and put each thought where it belongs. If you are thinking, for instance, that was so embarrassing what happened this morning, or I have to remember to call and reschedule my appointment, you can label each of these thoughts as a past and future thought, respectively, and permit yourself to stop thinking about it. Then, at this time, you could allow yourself and give yourself to stop thinking about them at this time, because they do not belong to now. If you've had the thought, I don't know if I'm doing this observation thing right, you can acknowledge that, and you don't need to know that, and you don't need to know, and that, what's that saying, Reb Simcha Yosef? You want to come and join in? Okay, just from here, sorry.
Yeah. So if you have the thought, I don't know if I'm doing this observation thing right, you can acknowledge that you do not know, and that right now, in this present moment, you will not know. Do not start comparing your observations to the way you've seen people do it in the past, or start formulating questions you will ask whenever you get the chance, so you can know if you did it right, because those thoughts do not belong to the present moment. Say hello to those visiting thoughts and then let them leave.
So that's something very, very important. We have the availability to just acknowledge and say hello to them. We do have that availability. One second, I just want to finish this paragraph. 1 second. Yeah.
I've been encouraged to ask 3 questions as I go about my day, walking in the street. I'm just noticing and becoming simply aware through asking the questions. What am I physically sensing right now? What emotions am I experiencing right now? And what thoughts am I thinking right now? And to the best of my ability, non-judgmentally observing if anything arises, and if so, what is it?
Yeah. Yes.
At first, it seems somewhat strange. However, it's becoming easier and more natural when I remember to ask the questions and observe. If you would like to practice observing your experiences as you go about your everyday life, it may be helpful to set an alarm to prompt you to observe. You do not have to stop doing what you were doing when the alarm goes off. You may just continue to do it with an increased awareness of your physical sensations, emotions, and thoughts.
Wonderful. So this is, again, a shift in the way we are relating to ourselves that potentially will lead to, apart from a self-knowledge of how actually we work, and it becomes far more exciting when we then pump these into the Sfarim. You pump this into Likutei Maran, you put this into Tanya, Slonim, the Sfarim that had this Messiah, then it makes it all more alive and exciting. Kamana. And the fact is, what we are just sharing here, and what I would say is organically, don't try too hard. Don't try too hard, just listen to the wisdom teachings, listen. And Be'ezras Hashem, with the grace of God, there will be a natural shift that takes place. If you do want to put an alarm on and just become aware, what am I thinking right now? What am I physically sensing? What emotions am I experiencing right now? Or if something comes up, look at that, I'm being aware of this now. Okay, this has come to visit. This thought has come to visit. This emotion, this physical sensation has come to visit. This can give us, let me reframe it. Play, experiment, and see what it does for you.
What I'm understanding then is that what I'm experiencing and hearing this is that the Rav is moving our seat of identity to awareness.
Correct.
Which is a very receptive place to be. The way I understand it is I need to be in a very receptive mode to be aware of everything. And my question is...
No, I wouldn't say everything. Change out everything, just to be aware.
To be aware.
Yeah.
My question is, I can't understand, is this something that you do for windows of pockets of time? Because I can't imagine functioning in the world with just staying aware. There's no, I can't see how to be active when I'm in that receptive place.
So you're asking a brilliant question, and maybe I can share like this. The question that you're asking is this only for pockets of time, or is this always? Because you can't imagine doing this always. Is that correct?
I can't imagine doing it always, but I can't imagine doing it always together with functioning. Right.
So what you will find, we read at the beginning, this is a natural wisdom. If I can throw back at you now in this language and let me know what you're thinking. You are thinking from nefesh, you're not thinking from das. You're thinking from within your thinking. How could it work that I can function every single day and still hold the state of awareness? That's a lower level of consciousness. What you will find is you'll naturally become more aware, and there's an ebb and flow, and you'll find at certain points you will have greater awareness, and certain points you will notice, I have not been aware. It's very natural. Very natural. The other Nakuda is the Ma'ar Naim writes that you never ever can stay in one state. It's based on really the Arizal, but you're never in one state. We are freeze framing a very moving set of wisdom teachings in order for education.
So there is an ebb and flow. It's not because
it's all an ebb and flow.
Can we be in that state at all times and also function? And I understand that it's more of that state can always be within our grasp, but there's a stepping in and out, like a lots of a shop.
Correct, right? Exactly. There's an ebb and flow, there's a movement, it's a gal, it's waves.
But not the point is that, I remember we had this conversation with the Rav, just even with the idea of the das as a point of tefillah to be praying for it or not, is that the lichatchila is that you can go into it whenever you need, and that can help you reframe.
It's not, so let me just, it's not that you go into it, you are it.
Right.
It's not that you go into it, you are it, and the question is, which variant of das am I in? Because there's 3 shifts that consciousness does. Observe, separates, and creates distinction, and connects. So do you remember the psukim where that is in Tanakh? When Eliezer, it says ladas, Uncle says observation, separation is in Shoftim, and Adam and Chava is das. So 3 movements of consciousness. You're speaking to one shift of consciousness. And the more that I'm aware collectively, that's going to change anything and everything that I do. Everything and anything that I do. So you're speaking to one of the shifts. One shift is awareness. Another shift is I could pull back and be aware. So we can call that in the language of the Baal Shem Tov, I think as we mentioned, Hachnan Avdallah. And then Hamtaka is I come in and I become one with it. When I'm in that state of oneness, through and from connecting to my more essential self, that activity that I will be doing is going to be completely different. Does that speak to your... Yeah? Okay.
Why would the Torah, though, start with the level of connection with Das first?
Because ultimately, it's connection we want. Everything is about connection.
But we wouldn't say that's natural. Isn't it more natural, like you, B'dafka, will just observe something?
Well, observation is only what happened after Chet Adam. We're speaking now post Chet Adam. So our natural wanting is kesher. We want connection. And the question is, what's the quality of our connection? This is the nakuda of what Rav Kook writes, that everybody is in a state of devekus, everybody is in a state of emunah, everybody is in a state of bitachon. Question is, what am I medavek to? What's my frameworks of thinking, and how safe do I feel within myself? So we ultimately want connection, and now we've got this purification that needs to occur. So let's wind down now for today. And just to take a moment, just think about number one, just being grateful. I'm very grateful that you came and that we're here and we're doing this. And what's one good thing that you walk out with? What's something that you walk out with today? Spend a moment, 2-3 seconds. And Be'ezras Hashem, we should have a very, very good week ahead. L'chaim tovim u'l'shalom. Bracha v'atzlacha.